Listen, you smell something?
Human emotions are materializing in the form of a viscous psychoreactive plasm with explosive supernormal potential.
What a discovery, a psychoreactive substance.
Do you know what this equipment is used for?
Boggle or Super Mario Brothers?
We'll have fun!
Yeah! They're still doing it. Really quite good work there.
My friend, don't be a jerk.
We've got no choice. Call the Ghostbusters.
Super Jackpot!
Welcome to Extraplasm Podcast. It's the only podcast on the internet that wants to know if it's fair game to put its 15-foot-tall inflatable Stay Puft Marshmallow Man back on the front lawn and call him Christmas decor, provided I give him a Santa hat to wear or some elves to stand next to. That should work, right? I'm your host, Jim Maritato, aka Vink Maniac on the internet, and this week I'm excited to be talking with you about Ghostbusters Toy Drives and charitable franchise efforts. Ryan Espin, president of the New York City Ghostbusters, joins us for a fun conversation about the Toy Drive initiative taking place this month, and that the New York City Ghostbusters will be kicking off with a live telethon event this week on Wednesday night over at GhostbustersToyDrive.com. Ryan and I also had an opportunity to get to know each other a bit and to catch up on the important work that NYC does supporting local charities, their recent certification as a 501c3 charity organization, which is an amazing thing to have achieved so that they can do better fundraising work and help their clientele and the folks out there in their community, their participation at New York Comic Con and at the Firehouse in New York City, at different Ghostbusters Day events, and so much more. It was really great to get to know Ryan a bit after hearing his name bandied about with respect to charitable ghostbusting work in and around the New York City area. And if you know me, you know I love a good conversation with folks from the Empire State because they feel a little bit like being back at home for me. So I was thrilled to be able to talk with Ryan this week and to be able to share this conversation with you as we talk a bit about the toy drives and charitable works that are taking place this holiday season. But before we can do that, we've got a bit of news to unpack in Ghostbusters headlines.
Still making headlines all across the country, the Ghostbusters are at it again.
Today, the entire eastern seaboard is alive with talk of incidents of paranormal activity.
Call-in topic today, ghosts and ghostbusting.
Extraplasm, read all about it. Ghostbusters headlines coming at ya.
In Ghostbusters Frozen Empire news, there's not much to report in terms of where we're at with production other than the news items we talked about last week, with relationship to continued shooting on the film that seems to be happening given explanations of McKenna Grace's availability for the next month that have been provided by a convention in the United Kingdom. However, what is very clear is that there seem to be Ghostbusters Frozen Empire posters like freaking everywhere, as a number of different Ghostbusters franchises, as well as Eric over at the Moogly Fan Club, have all reported on receiving shipments of posters to distribute via fan events and conventions and things as we track toward the movie. So keep your eyes open if you're looking for a poster for opportunities to pick one up at an event near you, or maybe even via some online giveaways and charity events this holiday season, as those posters are starting to circulate. And if nothing else, that should be an indicator to us that we're well now in the throes of marketing. We had our trailer, which we were all waiting for. We know what our title is, and now Ghost Corps is shipping out posters en masse to different folks and franchises to get out to the public and help spread word about the film. So if you've been lucky enough to get some of these posters, awesome, congratulations. I would hope to see that these are going to get distributed and get out there in the community. And, I know that, for instance, you can probably pick these up if you're coming out to Los Angeles Comic Con from either the folks over at the LA Ghostbusters or the folks from Ecto Exo, because I believe they'll both be present. And I think they both have some posters to get out there. So if you've got posters out there and you want to let folks know, of course, you can spread the word here at Extraplasm, and we'll try and let people know that you've got them out there for an online giveaway, etc. In Ghostbusters video game news, Rise of the Ghost Lord, the new game from N-Dreams for MetaQuest and PlayStation VR platforms, received a fun marketing push this past week as a result of a Stay Puft-themed takeover of the Sphere Arena in Las Vegas. If you've not seen this already, the Sphere Arena is part of the Venetian Resort in Las Vegas and is a massive state-of-the-art arena that looks like a giant pop-o-matic bubble sticking out of the ground. And on the exterior of it is a 54,000 square meter wraparound LED screen, the largest on planet Earth, and that can even be seen from freaking space. One of the features of this particular installation is that it presents activations and ads for different companies in rotation, and last week Mr. Stay Puft joined that rotation. A fun ad promoting the Rise of the Ghost Lord depicts Stay Puft's head emerging from the ground and filling the entire space of the sphere while pushing his face against the glass from the inside out and seemingly trying to grow in size before bursting into a pile of smaller mini puffs. Now look, I don't usually get super excited about, a billboard, wow, but this is some pretty damn cool technology, And if I were in Vegas and saw this, I'd be totally stoked. And if I were in the International Space Station and saw Stay Puft coming out of the ground, I would be concerned. But if you haven't seen video of this, head over to Ghostbusters News, where Jason Fitzsimmons has some good video of this spectral spectacle, because it's definitely something fun to take a look at. It only takes a couple moments and it'll bring a smile to your face. And it's kind of cool to see this, awesome technology being used for something as goofy as Stay Puft coming out of the ground to promote a video game. It makes me wonder, what kinds of awesome things can they do with this technology inside the arena when they're having rock concerts and other stuff. It makes me want to go see a show inside the Sphere. If I didn't already want to go, I definitely want to go now that they know they can manifest Stay Puft on demand. So maybe we'll get to see that sometime in the near future. In Ghostbusters merchandise news, let's talk about toys for a few moments. Arguably the biggest news of the week is that the HasLab campaign for the Hasbro 2-in-a-Box PKE and Ghost Trap combo pack reached its second tier milestone this week, and at the time of this recording is approaching 16,000 backers. Upon reaching 15,000 backers, the second tier of stretch goals was unlocked, meaning that backers of the project are now receiving a belt hanger for the Ghost Trap to be hung off of when used in cosplay and costuming, as well as a HasLab-themed Ghostbusters logo patch that looks like the Ghostbusters logo, but with a caution stripe colored no symbol that has a HasLab logo across it. This series of add-ons to the Trap and the PKE combo join the previously unlocked set of Zenner cards, the Trap and PKE blueprints, the stickers and bumper stickers that were in the first tier unlock, and the movie replica Ghostbusters logo patch that were in that first unlock. So we've got 13 days remaining before the campaign closes up, and still about 2,000 backers away from the final tier of stretch goals, which would provide backers with a PKE meter belt holster and a mini puffed Ghostbusters logo patch that replicates the 1984 logo as seen on everybody's arms in the movie. If you recall from our conversation with Eric Christensen a while back, and along with other folks, we've talked about the idea that the logos for the individual flight suits were all slightly different and handmade, and so those patches look different than an idealized logo you see today, that you can get on most patches that are out there. So this is one of those replica patches that'll look like something from the original movie. If you haven't backed this set of props yet, I can't stress enough that you should take advantage of the opportunity now, because you've got less than 2 weeks to lock your order in. And if you get your order in and we get to, the 18,000 mark in terms of how many people back this thing, everybody will get a PKE holster, and they'll also get a little mini puffed Ghostbusters logo patch that replicates the logo seen in the final frames after the credits for the theatrical release, and I believe also the Blu-ray release for Ghostbusters Afterlife. And so, if you want to get on this, I got to say, don't miss out on this, because after 2 weeks from now, you're going to be looking at a situation where the only way you have to get these things is going to be to go chase them on eBay with a markup. So if you are even on the fence about this, $300 for these two props is a really decent deal. If you consider how much these props cost individually, when you look at the Mattel options that are out there, or how the inflation sort of happened with those props once they were no longer available, you're probably going to be frustrated if you don't pick these up. So remember, you've got essentially 13 days to take care of this if you haven't already. If you've backed them already, maybe you should buy a second one so we can all get, that awesome unlock. I'm just kidding. You don't need to go buy a second one. But don't think I haven't thought about it. I bought 2 proton packs. I said I wouldn't buy 2 sets of these. And then I'm like, yeah, but you'll probably carry this around and drop them or something. And won't you be bummed out afterwards? And then I start thinking crazy and I'm like, I need 2. Somebody stop me quick before I make a second purchase. The other big piece of Hasbro related news is not uniquely about Ghostbusters, but it's certainly related to Ghostbusters action figure and toy collecting. Hasbro has announced the end of their selfie series service, whereby customers could scan their faces using the Hasbro Pulse app and then have a figure produced in their likeness. Ghostbusters Plasma series figures were among the first figures offered as an option for this service, and to be realistic about this, the results were kind of mixed. There were some folks who received figures that they felt looked like them, and there were also many people who were frustrated to find that the lack of glasses and adequate options for sculpted hair and facial hair left a lot to be desired in terms of achieving a realistic likeness. And so in response, Hasbro initially announced a new version of the service at San Diego Comic-Con this year, touting many of those previously missing customizations as things they were now going to provide after hearing feedback from customers. But now, however, it seems that Hasbro has decided this is no longer an option they're going to be providing, that they are not going to be fulfilling additional orders like this, and they even suggest that if you have an order for Selfie Series existing and you need assistance, you should contact them. What that means is not really clear. If that means those orders are going to be fulfilled or if it means they're not and you need to contact them to figure out how to get a refund. It's not really clear at this point. I have to say that I'm not entirely surprised by this, given the price point of these figures at about $60 each for a 6-inch action figure that doesn't really have any customization beyond an ambiguous likeness on its face and arguably its head shape. These were all figures that came on the same standardized male or female body with a rookie name tag. There was no attempt to even care about skin color on hands or necks and things because the body parts that would have been showing skin tones were all covered. There were non-removable gloves on the hands, and even the neck had an inexplicable black painting to it that looked like every Ghostbuster was wearing a high turtleneck all the way up to their chins almost. Ironically, the Ghostbusters Frozen Empire trailer has now shown us Ghostbusters in high turtlenecks, so you might have wanted to use these Selfie Series figures and get yourself a 6-inch customized red parka to make yourself into a little version of the Ghostbusters Afterlife trailer Ghostbusters, or rather the Ghostbusters Frozen Empire trailer Ghostbusters, but that's not going to be an option for you at this point, unfortunately. Maybe we'll get to see figures that have high turtlenecks if we get another line of Plasma Series figures, but you won't be getting them from Selfie Series. I do wonder if this means that the few Selfie Series figures I've seen go up on eBay over the last few years, where people were dissatisfied with their likeness and that they've tried to sell off for pennies on the dollar, will suddenly spike in value because what do you know? You won't be able to get the particular body buck that is utilized for these figures anymore. You'll only be able to get a standard Plasma Series one, arguably. We'll see. But, it's kind of sad to see this go away because it was an innovative idea. And I think that there was, big hopes that this would be successful and people would be able to kind of achieve their dream of having a version of themselves as an action figure. Maybe we'll get to see this kind of process refined in the future, as 3D printing gets better, as casting gets better, as scanning gets better. But for now, if you were looking to get a Selfie Series figure, that window has unfortunately closed. In other Ghostbusters merchandise news, the holiday season is upon us, and along with it are some new holiday sweater options for Ghostbusters fans. Jason over at Ghostbusters News reported on a new light-up ugly Christmas sweater available from licensed apparel maker Mad Engine over via Amazon at $69.95. It's pretty cool. It lights up. It has different things on it, like the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man in the chest and a series of Christmas trees across the bottom, I'm pretty sure. It's a fun sweater, but I'll be honest with you in telling you that you don't really need to spend $69.95 on it at Amazon because you can actually go and grab it from uglychristmassweater.com for $59.95 with free shipping, and you can likely pick up an additional 15 to 20% off using a promo code on the top of the website if you're, lucky or smart. I know that there was one there for Cyber Monday at the time that I recorded this, but by the time you hear it on Tuesday, that might be gone. But it seemed to me over the last week that they had a pretty strong rotation of promo codes that you can probably find one either there on the website or, somewhere else like Retail Me Not or something. But the point is that the sweater is made by Mad Engine. It's really cool looking. I got to be honest. I kind of want one. I kind of swore myself off of buying more Christmas sweaters because I only get to wear them for 2 to 3 weeks, yet I spend a bunch of money on them. But the design on this is really fun. It's got a Ghostbusters logo on the chest that's covered in Christmas lights, that are sort of weaved into the design, and then it has LEDs embedded within that light up. The bottom of the sweater has a design of alternating Christmas trees and Stay Puft heads, and the entire sweater has a bunch of different holiday accents and sort of snow themed things on it. It's an ugly Christmas sweater. You know what these look like. But it's a new one and it's pretty cool. And I will say that I think it's better than the one that exists already from Spirit Halloween that's been out of stock for quite some time. I like this design a lot better. So if you haven't seen this already, you can head over to Ghostbusters News to check it out. There's 2 other options for sweaters, though, that Ghostbusters News has not yet reported on at the time of my recording this, but that doesn't mean that Jason won't by the time you hear it. So we'll see. But Amazon has 2 options available from Ripple Junction, who is a licensed apparel maker who makes t-shirts and hoodies and a variety of other things with the Ghostbusters license. If you search for Ghostbusters sweater on Amazon, you'll find 2 new designs from Ripple Junction. One of them is a Stay Puft sweater depicting Tubby Soft Squeeze on the belly section of the sweater, as well as on the arms and the elbow region with Stay Puft branding in white on a blue background across the chest. The sweater additionally has red, white, and blue stripes, making for a fun and bright design. The other sweater is much more straightforward but no less cool. It features the Ghostbusters logo set on a black sweater with red accents on the elbows, neck, cuffs, and bottom. Both of these sweaters are available for a far more affordable $37.95, but neither of them lights up, and neither of them is particularly an ugly Christmas sweater. I mean, I think you can wear them to an ugly Christmas sweater party and nobody would question you because they're still, pretty tacky, garish, awesome, I want them sweaters. But the point being that they're not, Christmas themed. They don't have a bunch of different, Christmas trees on them and Christmas lights and things. So they're far more just Ghostbusters sweaters. But that doesn't mean you can't buy them and wear them to an ugly Christmas party or an ugly Christmas sweater party. What is an ugly Christmas party? Do you just go there and stare at someone's tree and make fun of it? But if you're going to an ugly Christmas sweater party, there's no reason why you couldn't wear these as options. And if you just want sweaters that you could wear when it's not Christmas, like, I'll be honest, when I look at these, I'm like, I kind of want these more than the Christmas sweater because I could wear this, in February and people probably wouldn't ask me if I thought it was Christmas time. But if you need one more knit Ghostbusters item, Ripple Junction also has a set of soft Sherpa crew sleep socks, say that 3 times fast, featuring the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man on them. These are basically long stretch socks that are kind of like their existing 3-pack of stretch socks, except that these are double lined and layered with thick blue tops and red pom-poms that if I wore in my house would have my cat chasing me across the house as I walk. So I may not get these because I don't want to trip over my cat and die. But these are kind of fun and cute. And if you're into kind of goofy socks as Christmas gifts and things, these are a really cool and good option. So you can pick these up from the Ripple Junction store on Amazon as well for $19.99. If there's more Ghostbusters Christmas stuff that comes out, we'll certainly let you know. As far as I know, there's no new Ghostbusters ornaments this year from Hallmark. I haven't run across anything yet, but maybe we'll luck out. Maybe there'll be some change to that. But I kind of think that we may be more in line to see more Ghostbusters, sort of Frozen Empire themed holiday merch maybe next year, rather than expecting to see a lot of brand new stuff this year. But we'll see. In Ghostbusters community news, there's not a lot to report on this week in terms of, new fan released items and things, or new fan released toys or props, etc. Because there was a lot of folks who were marketing things over Black Friday weekend. And I hope that you got to see some of what I was pushing out for folks via Instagram stories, etc. I want to stress, though, that if you're out there running a charitable event right now, or you have something going on for the holiday season you want folks to know about, please, by all means, reach out to Extraplasm on social media or via email at extraplazompodcast@gmail.com. The one thing I want to make sure you know about, and you've already heard me mention once, and you're going to hear me talk with Ryan about very in depth for the rest of the episode, is that the Ghostbusters Toy Drives are kicking off this week, and that there is this live telethon on Wednesday night for the NYC Ghostbusters, who are going to be inviting on over a dozen, it looks like almost 2 dozen franchises that are going to be coming on to talk with them about what they're doing in their areas, who they're benefiting, etc. But part of the deal with that telethon is that's also a direct fundraiser for the NYC Ghostbusters direct initiatives to help provide toys to kids in the South Bronx who are in temporary housing, etc. And so this is something that I want to encourage folks, that is my sort of big push this week on community news, that if you can tune in to this live stream that's happening over at GhostbustersToyDrive.com at 8 p.m. Eastern, and consider donating to this event. Ryan's going to talk a bit about some of the perks that'll be happening during the event, and an opportunity where you might be able to get some pretty cool stuff, like a cool sticker, if you are donating and making a minimum donation. But there's going to be a whole bunch of different stuff going on during this event that you'll want to be a part of, especially if you're the kind of person who got into things like the big Ghostbusters trivia stream that was done a few years ago that people had a blast with, and that John Roop, who's been on this show before, won, was champion of that competition. So, and who knows, you might even see someone you know on there, or find out about a franchise operating near you, or events that you didn't know about. So that's sort of my big community news push this week. I know the whole episode is going to talk about this a bit in depth, but I'm going to give it to you here too, in case you're the kind of person who breaks up the episode and listens to it in pieces and revisits it, that I want you to know before we hit the 20-minute mark of this week, that, you should definitely check out that event and support the toy drives that are going on and kicking off this week. And for a while now, I've been trying to leave the headlines segment with something fun or interesting to go take a look at that doesn't necessarily serve as like hard news or an event that's happening, but rather just something cool to take a look at. And this week, the thing I'm going to tell you that I really want you to go take a look at, because I think it's great, is Jason Fitzsimmons over at Ghostbusters News has taken the time to go dig through early releases and demos and prototypes of the 2009 Ghostbusters video game and to identify different scenes that we did not get in the original game. He's got footage of a different model, basically for Rookie, that is a different person entirely of a different gender. He has different cut scenes that have different dialogue in them that I didn't know existed. And I've only been able to sort of scratch the surface on starting to take a look at this before producing this week's Extraplasm, but I'm also totally stoked about it because I love Spirits Unleashed, but I love even more Ghostbusters, the video game from 2009. And there's so many things that we heard about that got lost in the process of the development of that game, such that, for Jason to be able to uncover some of it and to assemble it in a way that's easy to digest, rather than you having to go out and find all these files and figure out how to install them all, etc., is a really awesome thing to do. So if you haven't seen this already, head over to Ghostbusters News later on after you listen to the episode and after you listen to me and Ryan talk, and check out what Jason's got kind of cooked up over there with relationship to the Ghostbusters video game, because I thought he did a really good job of covering some of the things we didn't get to see and that are really insightful and cool. Okay, so with our headlines wrapped up, let's go now to my conversation with Ryan Espin of the New York City Ghostbusters as we find out a bit about the charitable work that the NYC Ghostbusters are doing this holiday season and have been doing over the last year. Joining me on Extraplasm Podcast for the first time and from a place that is the Empire State but is not yet frozen, even though we're tracking into winter. And even though Ghostbusters Toy Drives and Christmas and holiday seasons are coming, I'm really thrilled to be talking with Ryan Espin of the NYC Ghostbusters. Ryan, how are you?
I'm great, Jim. Thank you. Thank you for asking me to be here, because holy moly. I don't know what to say. I'm just exhausted. I'm exhausted.
Well, I'm glad that you're here, and I'm glad that you took some time to talk with us, because I know that you have a lot going on as we're tracking into the holiday season. We're going to talk a bit about the Toy Drive effort that you have going on, that you've been kind of, I know there's a lot of different franchises involved in it, but I'll say that you've done a lot of work to organize a lot of the communication about it. You have a live stream coming up we're going to talk about a bit. But I will say that your name is one that came up repeatedly every time I talked about Toy Drive over the last year. When I was talking with the Countdown City Geekcast guys last year, they were like, Ryan Espin is one of the great people who's doing this. And then I would talk to somebody else a few weeks later and say, hey, did you hear about this Toy Drive thing? Like, oh yeah, I think Ryan is doing that. Ryan Espin. Oh, okay. And so this year I was like, I'm going to make sure I talk to you and kind of give you an opportunity to come on the podcast and talk, because I love talking to the LA Ghostbusters who are doing great charitable work, but I also am like a New Yorker through and through. So I'm always like, is there an opportunity for us to talk about New York things and Ghostbusters and charity? So
I'm here for all New York things to talk about. So yeah. So the Toy Drive, right? This is our third year this year doing our live telethon, which started 3 years ago when Sony reached out, Ghost Corps reached out to all the different groups about organizing a Ghostbusters Toy Drive. I don't know if you recall when that happened.
Yeah, no, I totally remember it.
And it was all of a sudden emails back and forth. And then it's like, okay, it's going to be like in the next 3 days. And we were like, what?
It was very typically, and I say this with love about Ghost Corps and Ghostbusters.
It's Hollywood.
It was very much like, hey, we're going to do a thing and we're going to do it right now. Right.
Yeah.
And it was kind of, and I always find this funny because I think there's an ethos to Ghostbusters in this way that all things Ghostbusters happen with 2 weeks notice. And it's based off of what you can scramble and get together. And somebody said to me at one point, do you think that's just, that people should plan better or do something? I was like, no, that's what makes it a Ghostbusters event. It's that's how Ghostbusters operates. They're basically what can we scramble together in 2 weeks time to fight this paranormal thing that's happening and pull it together. And it's kind of amazing. It started out very much as I recall, hey, there's a day happening. And if you're a franchise, get out there and try and do a toy drive on the day that it's happening. And from there, you kind of ran with it. You had this much larger fundraising effort that had a GoFundMe at the time, I recall.
Yeah.
And I think that Jason Reitman and had donated to it and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, so that was wild. And so it was really last minute kind of thing, because for years we've been doing a toy drive for one of our members. He works for the Bronx Department of Education. So we've been working directly with them with an annual toy drive. And we would just go reach out to family and friends saying, this is the Amazon wish list. If you guys want to purchase something, go ahead, go here.
Sure.
So we were trying to figure out the logistics of doing one in person. And then it's like, okay, we're going to do this in 3 days. So I'm like, oh, okay. So it came down to, what if instead of us going somewhere, we just bring people to us? And that's where it came with the idea of doing the toy drive as like a live telethon. Like I kind of just like last minute goofily late at night was like, hey, what if we just, like Jerry Lewis this thing and just bring on special guests and, I'll wear I'll get one of those really long, skinny microphones and we'll just see how this goes. And it stuck. It sounded like something we could do because unrelated to Ghostbusters, I've handled live streaming on a separate YouTube board game podcast that I do. And so I'm familiar with that, how that works,
What's the name of that board game podcast?
Oh, Tabletop Express. Yeah.
Gotcha.
So, I'm big into board gaming outside of Ghostbusting. But bringing it back to the toy drive, we were very much focused on getting as many groups as we can. So we were reaching out to other groups. And it was at that point where we were just reaching out to like groups that we knew personally, because there's so many Ghostbuster franchises out there. We wanted to reach out to the ones that we knew that we've worked with in the past. And we were like, hey, are you doing this? Okay. Even if you aren't, can you just please go onto our telethon, just talk about your group for like 5 minutes in this past year, and then we're just going to move on to the next one. And we had a live GoFundMe go on at the same time, so people can donate while they watch. And then we had one guy, Nick, in our group who would just control like the ticker and control like people coming in and out. And then another guy in our group, James, handled how to purchase things at Target and work directly with the Bronx Department of Education, like buying these toys.
Gotcha.
And throughout the night, as we kept getting, like we got, I think like by the end of the first night, it was like $3,600. And around like the 2,500 mark, the Target site just crashed his entire cart, and it was just all gone. Because they probably thought it was like some bot or something,
Right. Just filling a cart full of like thousands of dollars worth of different toys. What is this?
Yeah. So we're like, crap, what do we do? We're like, I don't know. We'll just run with it. So what happened was, once all the money went into the GoFundMe, we set up a specific day where the Bronx Department of Education wanted us to bring our Ecto to a Target up in the Bronx, and we just closed out a register and just had Target employees just roll in like carts and carts of toys, and then we just paid the bill. That's all we did.
It's amazing.
So, yeah,
I remember seeing photos of this when you all did it, and I was like, this just like straight up went there. And just filled like giant boxes full of toys, just went to the checkout, took over a register. That's amazing. So, yeah. And what did you raise that first year, like total? Do you remember?
It was over 4,000. I know that. So every year we do, the goal is that year. So that year was 2022.
Gotcha.
No, 2021, man.
Right. Yeah.
Melton.
The year Afterlife came out. It's okay. We all forget.
Right. It was Afterlife that came out at that year. So we also had, Jason Reitman just like was one of our earliest donors, just dropped like $500.
That's awesome.
Like, whoa, jeez. We're already there. And then the year after that, I think it was around $2,600. So, not as much as the first year, but it was still a great time. And what was different about that one was we had the guys from Countdown Geekcast. We had Ted and Matthew. Ted also is part of Ghostbusters San Antonio.
Right.
And he actually got a lot of these groups together to say, hey, if you're going to do a toy drive, definitely do it this year. And we would love to help out. And, while this is going on, right, like a year after our telethon and them getting like toy drive and groups together, we reached out because we were like, hey, what's going on here? We're the toy drive people. What's going on? No, but I'm so grateful that he did that, because he reached out to a lot of groups that were a lot of like really small. We had a group that started like a week before the toy drive join, and it was just crazy. We had like 40 different groups, and it was one of those things like we're trying to dedicate like 5 minutes of time per person. How are we going to do this? And we're like, let's just do it, because we were figuring out like, do we do like maybe some groups? And we ended up doing all like 40 something groups and just like go from East Coast to West Coast with some bathroom breaks, one bathroom break in between, you know?
Yeah, I remember watching it because I remember watching some of those groups that had just been like, they had heard about the toy drive effort that had been kind of kicked off.
Yeah.
And gone, well, we could do that. We have flight suits. What if we did it? But they'd never done an event like that before. And it was sort of that impetus of like, you know, sort of Ted and Matt kind of reaching out and sort of starting their side of it, of kind of cultivating people together and connecting with you and kind of making this almost like it became something that went from, you know, oh, if you have a franchise, go out and do it, to much more of an organized sense of there is even if it's not all on the same day, there's an organized movement to be hosting these toy drives and to sort of recognize the sort of cumulative success of everybody's efforts in that process, which I just think is amazing and I love so much. So yeah, that's great.
Yeah. And we were more than happy to, you know, use this time for the telethon to like really highlight these groups, like, because I still feel like there's a need out there for how do I find the closest franchise to me, you know, like how do I find out about these Ghostbuster groups? So I think the telethon is a perfect time to say, you know, if you're doing a toy drive, just come up and talk about your group for 5 minutes, and then, you know, you're done. And people will notice, people will reach out, and you know, and hopefully they raise what they need to through it. And we have right now 18 other groups sign up for this year, as opposed to 40. But you know what? It's just so exciting to do it again. And it's 18 as of now, Saturday of the week, because we literally had people sign up like, this is go time tonight. We're recording, you know. So who knows, you know?
Yeah, and well, I'll say this too, that like even if you have 18 who end up coming to a live stream, it doesn't mean that that's 18 who are the only people participating, right? Like weird part of live streaming is that you have to get it done. Everybody has to be available. Everyone has to be there. Right. And so in some ways, like even if you don't get every person on the live stream, you can still get people who are involved and still contributing to the effort. And so if you're listening to this podcast and you're like, wait, but the live stream's tomorrow because it's happening on Wednesday and the podcast is on Tuesday, how am I supposed to get involved in that much time? You can still get involved in doing a toy drive. There's no reason you can't, you know? But so let's talk about this for a couple minutes. I wanted to sort of talk to you a bit about like, if for folks who are trying to get a toy drive like this started, what's like your advice on how to do? Because I know like for you, it was like, hey, let's go and run and we can grab the people around us and like, we'll go and do this GoFundMe. Like, what would you provide to somebody as a piece of advice now, like who's trying to start up a toy drive for the first time? Like, what are some basic things that they should do, or some tips you'd provide on how to get it done and have it be successful?
Yeah. So for sure, remember, you are a Ghostbuster in a flight suit, right? And you could kind of act as like the makeshift Santa for a toy drive that does not have a Santa. So first and foremost, find existing toy drives and say, hey, do you want our group to help you guys out? Help spread the word for another smaller toy drive. Like our group in particular, we like to focus on very small local charities that we actually feel like our group can make an impact and hopefully help out, you know? And with the South Bronx toy drive, it's such like a focused thing. It's not like, you know, like a giant conglomerate kind of, nothing against donating wherever, but
no,
I feel like if you could find a local toy drive to you that would need a Ghostbuster appearance, do like a Phil the Ecto kind of thing.
Right.
Even if you don't have an Ecto, you can still say it's a Phil the Ecto and just bring something, you know? Just have the Ghostbusters cart, there. Yeah.
Little Tyke's car.
Yeah. You know, Phil, the Ecto cart, right? You know, get creative, get caution tape on it, and boom, you're done.
Yeah.
You know,
as long as that's caution stripe accounts, it's fine.
Yeah. But yeah, for sure, reach out to existing toy drives first and foremost. Anything local, grocery stores, like anything like shopping plazas that have some sort of drive. then you're set there, you know?
Yeah. No, that's smart. I think that and I think it's important to consider that because, I think it is daunting to be like, oh, can we connect with like a big, huge, and I don't want to name any names because it's not even negative, but just trying to connect with a big, massive, like nationwide charity can be really difficult and challenging, especially when you want to do something kind of local and physical and have a presence at it. And I think a lot of the smaller charities in different towns kind of do get overlooked in some sense at this time of year, not because people are being, mean to them, but there's so many different opportunities to donate money and whatnot. I even just think that the Salvation Army is not bad, but the Salvation Army has how many bell ringers that are an army of bell ringers. And it's one of those things about going back to New York as a kid that just, you would know it was holiday time because of the number of bell ringers you see in the streets.
They're
right?
everywhere.
But it's like, that effort doesn't exist for every charity and for every different nonprofit organization out there. And so connecting with what's in your community probably is good for that reason. But also, like, from my standpoint, it's about that helps you build relationships. Like, so it's when you want to do other stuff down the line, you've met these organizations in your community and start to, get to know people, and they can call you up on the phone and go, hey, it's 4th of July. You want to come out and help us with your
and that's
or whatever
key.
it is,
That's for sure key. Like, having these relationships with these established charities and making your group known. Like, these are the steps that, that if you are a Ghostbuster franchise that is interested in doing charity work, these are the steps you need to take for sure.
Yeah. Along those lines, one thing I wanted to congratulate, you all at the NYC Ghostbusters for is that back in October, you managed to pull off what I think it's like 8 other franchises have done this. You've managed to get 501c3 status.
I think we're either the 9th or 10th, and then Buffalo is now either the 10th or 11th, but we just recently became a 501c3. Yeah. We'll
say, just for it to be like, let's just be economic, we'll say that you're one of about a dozen. There we go.
Yeah, like, that's true.
But congratulations on that.
Thank you. It was scary. I'm not gonna lie. And I'm sure there's other Ghostbuster groups that are interested in doing this sort of thing, and it does seem scary. First of all, we lucked out because our group has like 60 something members, and one of them is an accountant that has experience in this. So boom, the right person to steer us the right way. So shout outs to Jen. Hi Jen.
Nice. That's awesome.
And then and it's basically, we're really just doing the same stuff. It's just there's more paperwork involved. That's really what it is. Like, now there's more of the, like, we really need to put all the paperwork down. Because granted, the last 2 GoFundMes, right, they went to my personal bank account. So to keep things transparent, I have copies of receipts, and I shared them with our donors on GoFundMe. And then I also claimed it on my taxes as like this was a giant purchase that I made. Because, I don't want to. But now the good thing is, because we're a 501c3, we have different avenues of, now we could take donations directly, which is great, and have this sort of track record for that.
To me, that is a game-changing thing, because I've talked about this on the podcast before, that like one of the biggest challenges for fan charity groups is that they live in this sort of gray financial area where the money they take in sometimes is like, it's got to go to a charity, but if it gets put into your personal account, now somebody looks at it as income, and so you get, oh, you owe this much money on income taxes this year because you had this much money deposited in your account.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, what that money really went to was supporting kids in a hospital, right, or something along those lines. It was not income for you at all, and so it really complicates the circumstances for the folks who are running franchises and trying to run those kinds of events. And I think that I hope in your situation you figured out the ideal ways to navigate that, right? But it's like, that's a perfect example and a perfect story of you running 2 successful GoFundMe campaigns, but the money ends up coming into someone's personal account.
Yep.
And there's not really a way to divert that money directly into an organization's account from within GoFundMe. So there becomes this weird intermediary step where the 501c3 to me is like becoming so much more necessary, because it enables you to do better fundraising and in ways that, are healthy for both you and for the constituency of people that you want to work with as clientele and help out, you know? So it was kind of scary, but in the end, what will enable you to kind of do is in terms of how you run things differently?
Well, since we became a 501c3, and other groups too have definitely looked into this. There's now a whole new avenue of grants, other ways for us to raise funding and to make larger donations to the different charities we donate to. You know,
Right.
There's now specific overhead that can be handled specifically through the grants, through just different just basically. I have the person that is in charge of all the money. She knows what she's doing, so there's greatness there. The other thing too is that being a 501c3, there's now it feels a little more like a job. I'm not gonna lie about that at all. Like it definitely does. But it feels a bit more rewarding because at least like you see where your hard work is going, and it's not just me. Like you see, everyone in our group sees where this hard work is going,
right,
and gets to contribute towards that. So I think it just make things so much clearer. The charity, by the way, that we donate to primarily, it's called the Trinity Place Shelter, which is a small homeless shelter in New York City focused on the LGBTQ youth of New York. So
nice.
They've been great to work with, like hands down, one of the nicest charities. Like we've gone there, brought food, brought the car. They all had a great time. And it's one of those things that it's such like a small charity that we get to actually interact with the people directly there, like the people running it, like
right.
And it feels like the work that we do, the impact is there, and that's what I feel like is rewarding to, I guess, to the entire team. I know it's rewarding to me, but it's nice to see where it's actually going.
No, I understand that. Like, I think that's part of the problem of doing a lot of sort of like donating from afar work, is you don't get to see how the money gets utilized, and you don't get to have that direct relationship. And I think that's part of why, like, it's good to be in the position to do both. If that makes sense? Like, you're in the good position to sort of make connections at a local level and do things like your toy drives and go out and connect with organizations. But part of what I was thinking about as you were talking about feeling like it's work is that there's also a different sense of legitimacy that you're granted by the fact that you can say, oh, well, we're actually an on the level organization that pays, that processes our finances through taxes. And that means that you can donate to us, and your donation is tax deductible. So it means that
you have no idea how many times I pitched that for birthdays recently. Like, we could come to your birthday party and it's a tax deductible birthday party. It's a win-win for everyone. It's a donation. Right.
At the end of the year, you get to write it up. I mean, I'm laughing about this, but like, I recently just did this episode about, Ghostbusters 2016 that was where I went to a benefits screening where essentially like an organization called the Good Deed Corps that does this event called Stars in the Backyard. And the next one they're doing is like this coming month, has Will Ferrell and John C. Reilly, and they're doing a screening of Step Brothers. And so for like $150, you get to go be in an open bar, open food Q&A with Will Ferrell and John C. Reilly after watching Step Brothers. But for $500, you can, go to like a private party with them afterwards and meet. And at first, like, that sounds like, oh my God, $500 a ticket. That's so much. And you go, but you could write that off.
Yeah.
Right? Like, that's at the end of the day, you can write that off potentially and reduce your overall tax burden. And in contrast to that, how many people paid to be like class 5 or class 10 attendees at Ghostbusters Fan Fest and didn't get to write off shit?
Right. That's very true. Where was Louis Tully in that, where he had to think about, can this be a tax deduction?
Right. He was like trying to figure out how to get airline miles for the trip, because that was about all that was going to happen on that one.
Oh,
right.
Yeah.
But realistically, I think that like being a 501c3, as much as I'm joking about this, it's such an important step, because it means that, yes, you can engage people like schools and, other nonprofit organizations with a greater sense of legitimacy and say, yeah, we're not just like a group of volunteers who are out there doing something and who can volunteer for your organization, but rather we're a partner organization that can develop and sustain long-term relationships. And so, like, if you're listening out there as a franchise member and you like are like, I want to do a toy drive, great, like totally do a toy drive. But then after that, talk to your accountant about how you start filing for 501c3 status. It's sort of my mindset on this.
And say, hey, are you a Ghostbuster fan and would like to join our group? If not, move on to another accountant. Just keep going.
Yeah. If you need to find an accountant, you just go door to door and you're like, I just want to ask you, what are your feelings on Louis Tully from Ghostbusters? And, you know, if they invite you in and ask you if you want to play Super Mario Brothers or Parcheesi, then you know you've found the correct accountant who you should hang out with. Right.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm joking, but it's like, I am so impressed by every organization that does this. And I was so happy to see that you all did it, because it really does change the dynamics on how you're viewed by organizations. Because the reality is that there are tons of people who are claiming to do charity work out there, and not all of them are on the level. Right.
Yeah.
And so once you are sort of in that, you know, you've done the work to say, look, we are willing to do the paperwork and make sure that everything is on the level, and we are willing to get certified to do it, that kind of opens up doorways for you in a way that, you know, being average fans who just want to support an organization doesn't have the same cachet, I guess. So, you know, again, congratulations to you all for it, because I think it's an amazing thing to have accomplished.
Thank you. Yeah.
How long did it take? Do you remember how long, like what your process was?
So it was a lot of back and forth at first. There's a lot of paperwork you have to establish. Like, we've had bylaws for a very long time in the group. Which our bylaws were initially based off of the Alabama Ghostbusters bylaws. That was the starting point. Because, by the way, I joined the group in 2014, but the group in its current state has been around since 2012.
Okay.
So that was already established at that point, the bylaws. And then, you know, it's a lot of back and forth figuring out with the IRS. There's some money that needs to be put down at first. Some lawyers need to be involved. And then we wait for the IRS letter, and boom, there it is.
Yeah. My understanding is a lot of waiting and a lot of applying and documenting that you are, you know, doing legitimate activity of something, as opposed to just like, yeah, we just started a 501c3 yesterday. It's going to be amazing. We're taking donations for free ice cream for us.
Yep. Pretty much, you know, or the human fund, you know?
Yes. It's a reference from Seinfeld, the human fund. Yeah. Everybody's getting a donation to the human fund this year. That's right. Forgot about that. That's good. I like that. Well, not to change the subject off charity for a minute, but you've made a New York reference, because I always think of Seinfeld as references as New York references, because to me, you can't be a New Yorker and not have watched Seinfeld. Like, you have to have watched it. But I just want to ask you what you felt about this. The trailer, you've seen the trailer, I presume, for the new movie.
Frozen Empire?
Yes.
Yes.
If you had said no, I would have been shocked. You'd be like, no, I haven't had any time. I've been doing so much charity work.
This? No. Of course I've seen it. Yes.
I want to see what you thought about this.
Sure.
How excited were you to see New York as that trailer opened?
It was nice to finally see it, like, back in action, even if it is the B-rolls and, you know,
yeah,
and the studio set in London and stuff. But it's nice to see, like, the New York City skyline and everything. I do need to give full disclosure. So I am president of the New York City Ghostbusters. However, much like the New York Giants and Jets, I'm a resident of New Jersey. But I've grown up in Jersey, just close enough to the city, like, you know, that we would go so often to the city, you know?
Yeah. I grew up on Long Island, and I worked in Jersey, like, at one point, and I commuted into the city every day. And there was no point where people said to me, are you from Jersey now? Like, no, of course not. Yeah, I'm a New Yorker. So I drive in every day. I got the miles to show it. I have an easy pass. Would you like to see it? But that's, I don't think that's uncommon, really. I think that realistically, like, if you work in New York and you kind of experience culture in New York, you need to live around it. And that also includes right on the other side of a bridge or a tunnel.
It's cheaper. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, and you get a backyard.
It's a sizable backyard. It's pretty good. You know?
Yeah, you know. Otherwise, you have to. I mean, hey, even you have one of your compatriots from New York there, Chris Sorrentino. Shout out to Mr. Pizza Plaza, Mr. Real Ghostbusters.
That guy.
You know, he's got his Staten Island backyard, and he's got all kinds of wildlife. He's got all his family of raccoons back there.
Oh, I know. Pizza. He's like a Disney princess with those raccoons. It's amazing. You know?
I think he just adopted a cat. I think that he
did.
had a cat in the backyard that
Yes, he
breaking
did.
news, everyone. Chris Sorrentino,
Breaking
aka
news.
Pizza Plasm, has new pets.
Yeah.
Give him a
He's
shout out.
awesome. I met him very long ago. I think it must have been 2011, New York Comic Con is when I met him, because we were there. I was there. Actually, that year was the first year I dressed up as a Ghostbuster at New York Comic Con.
Gotcha.
And that was when we were doing the Minions of Gozer show, which is like Ghostbusters meets Rocky Horror Picture Show. So we were there, ran into Chris Sorrentino, and immediately he was like all about the puppet Slimer I had, and all about like Ghostbusters. Yeah. And he came to a show, we were on his podcast, and now he's a member of our group, and he's such an awesome guy.
Yeah, he's been on this podcast, and I really enjoy talking with him. He's got some artwork out right now coming out over the holiday season that is out, and I'm pretty sure he's the person who drew your awesome logo, isn't he, for your Toy Drive logo?
Yes, for the Toy Drive, yes.
Yeah.
So our Toy Drive graphic, that graphic came about last year, and we were because we asked him if he would be willing to draw something for graphics wise for the event. Because last year, I don't know if last year's graphics, we had like a Christmas wreath with all the different franchises as like different ornaments and a lot of like the mini puffs and stuff. And then we were like, can you just draw the Ecto with the Christmas tree on top? And then like he took it to the next level and made it look amazing.
It's amazing.
Geez,
it's still like,
it
needs to be on every Christmas card I send out because it's such a great piece of art.
So I'm going to give a little spoiler about the charity drive we're doing on Wednesday, like the telethon, but we actually have some stickers made up of that Ecto. Nice. We are giving them at a minimum donation. I don't know what the minimum yet is. I'm guessing $10. I'm guessing. But those will be sent out to like the first 50 donors.
Oh, nice.
So
that means I need to be in line. I'm going to get.
You could be in line. There you go.
People can come and try and get stickers at the telethon, and I'm going to be there in force. I'm going to bring an army of bots with me, so that way I can make sure I get one, maybe 50 of them, and put them all on eBay. No, I'm kidding. But outside of stickers at the telethon, what else can people expect in the telethon this year?
Yeah, so actually, I want to see new faces on this telethon. So I'm actually bowing out of hosting duties and getting 2 of our members to host this year's telethon. So we're going to have Charlie Rivera, who's also a member of the Long Island Ghostbusters and a member of our group, to do co-hosting duties with Luna Mars, who just joined our group last year too. So nice. I'm pretty pumped about that.
That's great. And do you expect, you said 18 people or 18 different groups right now are involved in the Toy Drive? Do you have them all coming on the telethon?
As of now, there's 18 different groups signed up. And then our group, of course, is 19, I guess. And then we always interview a member from the Department of Education, just so people see where the money is going. And then so we got 20, and then there could be surprises. I don't know. It depends if I get emails back, and we'll see.
Well, people have to tune in to find out about what surprises may happen.
Yeah, tune in more.
Yeah. So I mean, I'll be honest. If you're a fan of Ghostbusters out there and you're a fan of Ghostbusters franchises, it's a fun night to tune in and watch people sort of talk. And I imagine that, with each group, you're going to have an opportunity to kind of connect. And like, we're all in the midst of being excited about an upcoming Ghostbusters movie. So there's like no shortage of people to talk to about what they're excited about or what's happening. And as each group is getting ramped up for not just, the holiday season, but also just, hey, there's a movie coming out and we're all getting stoked. So
now the question is, how many on the stream are going to be wearing red parkas, That's the question.
Yeah, I imagine that if they are in red parkas and on their web streams, then there's going to be probably some very hot people.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Especially if they have any sort of lighting on them. Forget it,
Yeah, like it's just going to be kind of painful to endure. So hopefully not. I'm going to hope if people are in red parkas that they've gone out and gotten like, I don't know, the Temu version of the red parka that you can just tear away.
As dumb as this sounds, I'm surprised no one has gone with the name Red Parka Jr. for this. Because that's the first thing when I heard Red Parka, like adding Junior to it,
Yes, I like this idea. This Red Parka Jr. Somebody should sell that. That should be like, honestly, you think you may have just named a Phantasm toy. That to me is like a perfect
Red
name
Parka Jr. Like I was thinking, like, yeah, or like a new screen name. This is the AOL days,
I was really surprised how long it took the fandom to come around to starting to make Redcoats jokes.
Yeah.
And by that, I mean, like, someone posted in like GB fans and wrote like, "Hey, where do you get that red coat?" And I wrote back, "I don't know, but if it's by land, it'll be one lantern. If it's by sea, it'll be two." Like, just.
Oh man.
Oh god. But I will admit also, I think that those are a little bit of like, and you can probably appreciate this, that I've learned this living out here in California, that not everybody has the same sense of colonial history as a person who grows up in one of the original 13 colonies and is really deep into that educational system that's like, let's make sure you know about everything that happened here. So, yeah, you get to learn about New England, New York, but not so much here. They learn more about like missions and things in terms of like the underlying history, because it's what essentially brought settlement here. Yeah. So there you go. Different podcast, everybody. You're like, Jim, when did the history podcast start? I don't know. I don't make one. Let's not get further into it before I get things wrong. But in more recent history, we talked about your 501c3 experience. The other thing that you've had go on is you all were at New York Comic Con. And I believe you mentioned the LI Ghostbusters, the Long Island Ghostbusters. Shout out to them. Because as a person who's originally from Long Island, I deeply respect that there is a Long Island Ghostbusters, and that for many years they were participants at the Spooky Walk at Camp Aquatuck, because that's like literally where I grew up. So like I used to go to Spooky Walk as a kid. So to see them doing it there is great. So I'm glad you were partnered with them. And you were also partnered up with the Hudson Valley Ghostbusters, who I also think are great, and shout out to them, because I literally lived in the Hudson Valley for 8 years of my life and was a college professor. So you were hanging out with like people from all of the places that I have grown and loved in New York. And then of course, Dan from Buffalo. And the other,
we did have Buffalo there. And of course they brought over a firefighter from Hook and Ladder 8 to work at our booth as well too.
Which made you 100% without question official, because now you had, official firehouse representatives. I mean, you were already official. You're a 501c3.
And we beat Buffalo. You're listening, Buffalo? Sorry.
But tell me a bit about like, I want to talk about NYCC in particular in a minute, but I like this idea that like as a New York City franchise, you are collaborating with the other franchises and sort of like the suburban outlying lands around you, right? Like it's everybody's a train ride away. Basically, you can come into the city and meet up with you and have this sort of collaborative thing going on at New York Comic Con. How has that come about? Like the sort of collaborative engagement that you have with the other franchises around you?
I personally feel like there's no reason for any Ghostbuster franchise to engage in a turf war. Like, this is not West Side Story, as much as I love doing the ballet. But at the end of the day, we're all cut from the same cloth. We love Ghostbusters. None of us own Ghostbusters, and we just got to remember that. Like, we just love, and the other thing too is that to the general public, when you're working together, you're still just one Ghostbuster group. They're not going to care like what division you're from and whatnot. You're just guys in flight suits, So I try my best to reach out to some other groups that I like. Fortunately, being in New York, a lot of groups do tend to reach out too. Like they tend to reach out like, hey, I'm coming to the city, So we always, try to, I guess, just say, if you have any questions, let us know. Myself and another Ghostbuster in our group, we're licensed New York City tour guides. So we actually do Ghostbuster tours as well too.
Nice.
So yeah, it's one of the ways we raise money for charity, which is always fun.
And I wondered if like part of that collaboration came out of the Firehouse event. I know that you've done the walking tour portion of it and stuff and helped to coordinate that in the years past. And it became something that, and this is by no means that I'm like putting down in any other group or any other group of groups out there. But I think that there are some groups out there that kind of operate in this is our turf, this is your turf, or rather that is your group, this is our group. And we don't really come together to do much together. We may recognize each other at conventions and say hi, but we each have our own tables and we go our different directions kind of thing. And I like seeing that at a major convention like NYCC, you've kind of got this model that invites in other franchises and kind of coordinates with them to be able to share that space and to help run and coordinate the booth. And it's kind of funny, like you said, this thing of, people not knowing, who are you with? I've had that experience. Like I've had that experience of being like, I'm not in the LA Ghostbusters. For anybody who ever wonders about this, I love the LA Ghostbusters. They're great people. I also like the folks in the Orange County Ghostbusters. They're great people too, right? But like, I try not to join, and I say this in all honesty and like all fairness, I think franchises are great, but as a person who wants to have a podcast and talk to lots of people from different franchises, I'm always afraid of being, oh, you're with that franchise, and it creates that sort of, oh, or is this that franchise's podcast kind of thing? And so it's one of the reasons why I've been like, I'll be friends with everybody's franchise and I'll help promote anybody's stuff, but I'm not going to put one person's badge on my arm, right? Or one group's.
Yeah.
But I think that that's like so important in terms of helping nationwide efforts and things like collaborative toy drives and stuff work, is generating that ethos and that model. So I don't know. I just kind of wondered like how that works for you all at NYCC. Like, did it work well? Did you all collaborate well together?
Yeah. Everyone we've had has been phenomenal. Hudson Valley in particular, they were there helping us out the year prior to.
Gotcha.
And then the Massachusetts Ghostbusters, we had one member from them come to us as well too. And I've worked with them in the past at Boston Comic Con. I've gone to their booth, and actually we ran our slime lab there. And they have a great group over there, the Massachusetts Ghostbusters. Good people. But going back to it, like end of day, like we're all just big Ghostbuster fans, and we just need to remember that and have fun with it, So I like to collaborate as much as I can with other Ghostbuster groups. I have friends all over the world now because of this movie that we all love,
Yeah, I was just saying this, that like recently, that I feel like Afterlife was this weird gift that we all got to sort of like come back to be friends with each other, like to kind of we all were Ghostbusters fans, but there was something to celebrate that we all could come together and be involved in and appreciate. And it's kind of like this now ongoing thing. We have a new movie coming out that we all kind of get to come together and celebrate, and to kind of, not to bring this all back up from last week's episode, but it's the difference of coming together to denigrate something because you thought that the movie was not so great. And that's the only way you can make friendship, is to shit on something.
I get that.
I'm not one of those people, but I mean, that's what part of what I mean is that there's this collaborative thing that can exist that appreciates and loves this new movie and loves the property that's coming out, but also where I think we're all learning how to engage in better synergy and how to better collaborate with each other. And I don't know if that's because of like the pandemic required everybody to be collaborative in things and do things like toy drives on the internet, because you couldn't go out and do them in other places. You know what I mean? But it's like, it's kind of changed a bit, I think, to some extent, how some franchises are operating and being a little more open to that collaboration. And I think it's really healthy for the fandom, and it's really healthy for the charity work, because the more brains you can get kind of working together on the same effort fundraising, the more you can do collaboratively together. So
yeah. And part of collaboration, part of the inspiration too for the telethon was the collaboration that we saw when the Windy City Ghostbusters handled their trivia as well.
Oh,
like
yeah.
That, like during the pandemic, that giant live stream. Yep. I was there representing our group, and we lost poorly, but like it was cool to see all the other franchises out there, and it's nice to have, like, you have these friends all over the world that all share the same thing. And like, I like going to different conventions. I remember in 2016, I was at Gen Con in Indianapolis, and I hung out with Bob from Windy City, and then we met some members of Circle City Ghostbusters there. And man, it's just it's so cool just doing this sort of stuff.
Do you think that just for you at a personal level, and this doesn't have to be about like the whole group, but do you think that some of that like love of collaboration and that dynamic like willingness to adapt comes to some extent from like your love of tabletop stuff too? Like, because I mean, like, people can't see you right now, but there's a ginormous wall of like board games behind you and tabletop games, right?
Yeah.
And, like, I imagine there had to be some innovation that went on for you during the pandemic of like, how do we do what we do as a community and playing when you can't get together and actually play?
Because Well, there's actually a lot of cooperative board games, and prior to the pandemic, I actually was a fan of solo board gaming as well. There's actually solo
Gotcha.
style board games, which is not like, okay, you take a move, then you take a move. It's like you're working, you're trying to beat the game in what
Right.
mechanics are presented in front of you. So yeah, with board gaming, a lot of stuff went digital, and I actually grew into finding another gaming group outside of my local community, but like all over like the country. Like we play online games and stuff,
Right.
like the online board games, which is a crazy topic if you don't know what's going on with board games online, but you can play board games online with people and it's fun.
Yeah, no, you totally can. I mean, I think about just the number of things that you can grab on Steam to go play games online, and I can't remember the name of it right now, but there's a thing called like tabletop simulator, right?
Yep.
Yeah, where you can basically like go get virtually any game somebody's ever created and like figure out how to play it online. Yeah.
I've even play tested games on there too. It's pretty
That's
cool
awesome.
stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a thing I never knew existed before the pandemic.
Yeah. But I did want to bring up one board game thing too. Ghostbusters and board games. I'm still waiting for the perfect Ghostbusters 2 board game thing. I love board games. I'm not a fan of a lot of the Ghostbuster board games. So sorry for the snobbery, but I just wanted to bring it up. I'm waiting for the perfect moment of like Ghostbusters and board games to put together.
I'll tell you what's not, just real quick for fun. And this is not to be like, hey, sorry, but you made a bad game. Like, I have that Ghostbusters Monopoly, and that's fine. Like, it's Monopoly, right? But like,
it's Monopoly
But I just don't understand like why there's a thing on it that you push a button that plays the Ghostbusters theme song, or what that's for. Like, are you supposed to do that when you pass go? Like, what's it for? It has no utility whatsoever in the process of playing the game. At no point do you pick up a chance card that's like, hey, you met Ray Parker Jr., aka Red Parker Jr.
Red Parker Jr.
And and you need to push the button now. No, there's just the button on the box for no reason whatsoever, so that way for novelty you can play the music that comes out of it. Like, yeah, it was just like, hey, isn't this interactive and cool? And then you play it and you're like, oh, okay. And then just like beyond that, I just kind of like, didn't I used to lease hotels in this game or something? Now what am I doing? Yeah, I don't know that it translates well is my point. But
the role playing game is pretty good though. From the 80s,
role playing game is interesting.
It's very good.
Yeah,
and I know there is a podcast. I think it's called Ghostbusters Resurrection or something.
Yep.
It was where they did the role playing game. They do it on and off. I don't think they've done it in the last couple of years.
Yeah, I know of that because of the fine folks over at the Crossrip, who have had folks on from that before in the past. You can probably find those episodes in the Crossrip back catalog if you look. But yeah, no, I think that's kind of interesting that I don't know that I've found the ideal Ghostbusters tabletop game either. I think that's I'm still waiting for it, but it's also not a thing that I like. Here's my problem with tabletop games. I don't have kids, and I have like one person who lives with me. So any board game I buy, we like play it once, and then it goes on a shelf, and then we look at it and go, "Hey, why do we have so many of these, and we don't have people over and do anything with them?" And all of our friends are on the internet.
I play most of them online too. A lot of these don't even get touched. So that's the sad part. Unless I'm doing solo gaming,
Right. Yeah.
So,
but I do think that there's an ethos to that, sort of that collaborative, the tabletop play and tabletop gameplay has a lot of collaborative elements to it that I think when you bring into the notion of like, how do you bring a community together to do fundraising and stuff even makes sense to me. There can be a sense of competition, but also a common goal of having a fun environment. So it's like you can be competitive about things. That's one of those things I loved about the Starlight Initiative that we did. A lot of different franchises participated in. The LA Ghostbusters had a big emphasis in getting started, was that you had a tally of how each franchise was doing in that process, or how each organization was doing. But at the end of the day, everybody was contributing to the same amount of money, so it didn't really matter. So it was like, even if you only raised, $200 versus $2,000, you could still feel like you did something. But if you also wanted to be like, we raised $2,000, look at us on a list, you could feel good about yourself.
Yeah. I know our group joined that, and we are probably one of the lower ones because I think we joined later because it was one of those things like, what is this? we're and then we ended up joining, and I think it ended like half a month after or so. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of weird because it was like not everybody knew about it, and then it was something that we talked about on Extraplasm a bunch. We did a raffle for it and stuff, but but if any amount of money at the end of the day was a good contribution to help kids have Ghostbusters gowns. And I think that that's what's important about these kinds of collaborative engagements that, you're doing, whether it's the toy drive or whether it's even just having folks out from locally at NYCC to contribute to what's going on. It's really cool.
New York Comic Con was fantastic. I got to finally meet Maurice LaMarche personally, so that was also exciting. He signed my Proton pack,
Nice.
And what's cool about New York Comic Con, first of all, so at New York Comic Con, I don't know if you've ever been to New York Comic Con, but
I haven't.
It's crazy now. Like, I remember way back when I used to be able to go to, on the day of New York Comic Con, walk in, buy my ticket, and just walk in. It's not like that anymore at all. Everything sells out. There's exclusives. There's all sorts of stuff, right? But we've made some good relationships there at New York Comic Con that we tend to be invited every year. And we usually go with the 501st groups. We're usually right next door to them, so all the Star Wars people are there, and then like, hey, it's the Ghostbusters. And I love that we're in New York Comic Con in this way, because I love everything about Ghostbusters and all the groups that are out there, but Ghostbusters is such a New York movie. It's so nice to see the Ghostbusters at New York Comic Con, because of course they're going to be at New York Comic Con,
Yeah. I mean, this is part of why I asked you about the trailer, and then I forgot that I asked you about it because I got derailed. But,
it's nice. It's nice that it's back in New York, even though I live in Jersey. Whatever, it's back.
But realistically, like, to me, I went, "Oh, we're back in New York," and seeing the Wonder Wheel and seeing all these little moments of Coney Island, I was just like,
"Yeah, that was cool."
We're back,
and we just did an event at Coney Island too. We were at the Cyclones game this past year.
Nice,
so,
but I mean, that's what I'm. Yes, it makes sense that you should be at New York Comic Con because, look, Oklahoma's great. I'm not taking anything away from fictional towns in Oklahoma that were actually shot in Canada, but I love seeing the Ghostbusters in New York because it's part of the first movie. New York is one of the characters of the movie. Right. It is in the second movie, too. So much so that, you have your mayor of New York talking about what are all of the New Yorkers going to do? Are they all supposed to just be nice to each other? And you get the sense that New York is part of that movie. They come out and sing at the end. And it's part of what helps to save the day is that New York is part of the movie. So, the trailer made me light up in that way. But I can say for the same thing of there's a big difference between, and I'm not, again, this is the same way you said, it's nothing against anybody else. To me, there would be a big difference between encountering the Ghostbusters in New York as a kid, if I were walking down the street, versus encountering them in the middle of New Mexico. And for the New Mexico Ghostbusters, if you exist out there, that's not a shot at you, I swear. I have relatives who live outside of Albuquerque, and they're very nice. But it's New York thing.
Like you mentioned, Chris Sorrentino was on the show, and he's absolutely right. If you come to New York, definitely bring your gear. If you want to see what it's like being in New York City as a Ghostbuster. There's that one episode of The Real Ghostbusters where the Ecto breaks down. It was the call to Cthulhu, and they had to go down into the subway, and legit, those are the reactions we get. And it's great. But the cool thing is, too, everyone loves Ghostbusters in New York. And I remember a couple times I've taken advantage of that. Unfortunately, there was one time when we were going to be late for we were driving our Ecto, and we were going to be late for an event, and because I missed a turn, so it was going to add another 15 minutes of traffic. So I got to a red light intersection, and I'm like, you know what? Forget this. I turned on the sirens and the lights, and just made an illegal U-turn in the intersection. There was a cop on the corner. And he just looked at us and mouthed out "Go, just wave his hand saying go." NYPD is so cool with the Ghostbusters.
It's funny you say this.
They have a blast with it.
It's funny you say this because recently at the same time as you were there for NYCC, Ecto 1NJ was coming. Had come to New York Comic Con as well, and was doing their ghost tours around the city during that period of time. And I was thinking about this, this is part of where you go, New York and Ghostbusters fit together. If you come out for the Firehouse event, then you can do a walking tour with basically a Ghostbusters New York tour guide docent, right? You get to take your tour guide job, your credentials, right? the ability to be a trained tour guide and apply it to Ghostbusters and do a specific tour for that. And if that's not good enough, you can now literally also ride in a authentic movie replica that will drive you around the city and give you a tour of the city, which I'm like, you can't do that in any other city. That's because New York is in the movie, right? Like, if you were to do that here, you could drive people in a Skid Row and you could show them a bombed out firehouse no one can go in and go,
that's true.
That's where it happened. Now make sure your doors are locked.
Yeah.
I still need to get inside. I really want to. I've driven by, I've stopped, I've gotten out of my car, but I've never made it inside, right? And so, but to me, it is very much that like New York is so much part of the movie that you have this experiences of being able to do these tours and whatnot. And in terms of you describing this thing about the cops loving the Ecto and loving New York, they very much had the same experience. I know that Tony Taylor and Brendan Pearce were on the podcast recently and talked about their experience of riding with Greg Hilliard, who's the Ecto tech, as they came out to New York Comic Con. And basically, like, there's video of this that Greg drops them off, and as he pulls back into traffic, he just throws the blue lights and the sirens on, and he just back into the roadway into moving traffic as everybody hits the brakes, and everybody's like, "Yep, nope, that's it. The Ecto One's here." Like,
that's the Ghostbusters. Yeah, and the cops are into it. Like, it's like, we've actually got pulled over once on the Jersey Turnpike. So the state trooper could take a picture.
The Jersey side, but yes,
that's what it was.
The pictures.
But it was so we could take a picture, you know? But yeah, no, it's surreal. And they are doing their tours. We also do tours as well too. Like you did mention, we did the walking tour on Ghostbusters Day. So with those tours, we do it as an effort to raise money for the Trinity Place shelter as well. We schedule them out. So if you guys ever come to New York and want to do either a walking or an Ecto tour, just message us directly on Facebook or email us. And then we could schedule it up. But there's only two of us, and you know, we're all full-time employees, so it's a matter of can we make it work within our schedule too.
I'm going to come out to New York and I'm going to demand that everyone take me on their tour, and then I'm going to put together like a Zagat guide. It's just like nothing but Ghostbusters tours in a book rated. We actually ran into Ecto NJ too when we were doing one of our tours. Like we pulled up at the firehouse with our Ecto right behind, and theirs was there, and it was so cool. It was nice to talk with them. They're good guys, you know. That is surreal though, because it's kind of funny that like it's like showing up for dropping the kids off for school, except it's Ecto's in a line waiting to get in the firehouse. You know, and they're so cool. They don't have to be nice to us. I stress this in every tour. The firefighters here do not have to be nice to us, and they are nice to us. So don't be a dick to them, you know? I've had this conversation because people have asked me how it is that I, as a person who was born and raised in New York and was there until I, like, not in New York City, but I was on Long Island or upstate and always within a train ride or a drive-in, I had driven past the firehouse I don't know how many times when I was working in New York City because I was dropping off my roommate at different points. He was working at the World Trade Center at one point, and then when it wasn't there anymore, he was just working downtown near the financial center. So I was often down in that area and driving back up, and if I wasn't, I was coming out of Chelsea and then heading towards the tunnel. So somehow I would end up at the firehouse, find myself in Tribeca, and be like, okay, there it is. I'm going to wave it as I drive by because I'm stuck in lots of traffic. But I never got out and stopped, never went inside, never like tried to buy a t-shirt. And I started thinking about this recently. At the time that I was doing that wasn't a thing. It wasn't like, you know, I'm thinking about this like 2004, 2003. Like that wasn't a period of time where you would just walk up to the firehouse and knock on the door and be like, is this where Ghostbusters was filmed? And do you have any t-shirts I can buy? And I have a patch I want to give you. Like it's just none of that was a thing. It was not a thing, really, you know? I remember specifically the first time I saw the firehouse, because same thing, like I live in Jersey, but we'd go into New York all the time. And I never thought about it, to be honest, as like, this is a real building in New York. So, you know, like, why am I going to expect like to see like Wayne Manor or like the clock tower from Back to the Future, which granted, those are both, I guess, places you could visit, right? But, you know, you never think about like, am I going to, you know, should I go see the firehouse? And my parents were driving us to go see go to the Intrepid, the museum, that is also the battleship in New York.
and we got off the Holland Tunnel, and I just screamed because you could just see it right there. And like my mom thought, like, "Oh my god, what happened?" Like, "Oh, it's the Ghostbusters firehouse. It's real. Like, it's here." You know, and it was just one of those things where like that never crossed my mind like that. But I remember the bay door was open, and they had the Ghostbusters 2 sign in that bay door. Like, it was like just mounted on the wall. Like, oh my god, like how amazing is this? So I'm like, thinking like, Mom, you want to go to the Intrepid? Like, the Ghostbusters firehouse is right here, Because like as a kid, like, going to New York was like an exciting thing.
Yeah.
We would see the library. Like, oh yeah, one day I'm gonna go to Columbia University. Like, no, that never happened. But you start thinking these things, and eventually, the first time I really went to the firehouse after that was during my Minions of Gozer days when we actually reached out to the firehouse about doing a photo shoot there with a 13-foot Marshmallow Man, like this guy in like this 13-foot Marshmallow Man suit. And that was amazing. Like the first day where we were all together, and I was suited up in like a proton pack made out of Tupperware and painted up in wood, But we had it was a very DIY show. So that was the aesthetic we were going for, And then like it gets to that point where it's like, yeah, this is New York. This is crazy. Like, and we're here, and now it's just now every time I go there, it's just it's more it's like, yes, this is the building. Isn't it smaller than you expected it was in person? But it's here, and they're so great inside.
I think that part of it too is that, and I learned this when I moved here. I think I really kind of took for granted how much I had around me in New York. Is that when you are there all the time and you're like driving in for work or whatever it is, there's stuff that's on television. There's iconic stuff everywhere.
Yeah,
right. It's like you don't get impressed by Times Square as a New Yorker because you're like, yeah, whatever, is a tourist trap, whatever. This is where lots of people go take pictures and buy souvenirs. And from what I hear recently, they see a lot more because apparently Times Square is getting back to the way it was in the 70s. But I don't know. I could be wrong about that. I heard some very interesting tales from somebody who went to Times Square recently. Was like, I saw open drug use and defecation on the streets, and I was like, well, that hasn't been that way in a while.
Yeah,
but I digress. You see the stuff so often though that like the stuff that you are driving past that you almost take for granted how it's there. Like, you don't need to stop and take a look at it because, oh yeah, that's part of New York. It's the backdrop, right? So to me, like the firehouse almost had that feel. And then I moved here and I moved to California and I went to like Point Magoo for the first time, which is like a beach off of Malibu. And I realized that I was standing on the beach where the damn dirty apes had blew it all up. Right. And I was like, oh my God, like I'm literally at like the spot in Planet of the Apes, like where this happened. Or would just be other stuff that I would go to when we went to the Sedgwick, like, we went to Sedgwick, but the Millennium Biltmore. I went in the Millennium Biltmore, not because I was there for Ghostbusters Day, but because my partner took me on a walking tour of downtown eateries in Los Angeles for my birthday one year. And we walked past the Biltmore and I went, I'm going in here. And she was like, what? And I was like, I got to go in here. I don't care. We'll catch up with this food tour. And I went inside and was like, oh my God, this is where the flowers were still standing. And I freaked out. But I was like, so strange to me that I never had those experiences in New York because it was something that, it was here. It was commonplace. Yep. That's where that happened. That's where that movie was filmed. Yep. That's the Empire State Building. Yep. Tons of stuff is happening. Even King Kong's climbed it. Right. So it's just, you just take for granted to some extent how much is around you when I think you live near it. And then when you move away from it or you have distance from it, it becomes this sort of like more revered place to go to, almost like a pilgrimage, and so now I have this commitment I need to get back because I'm like, I got to go to the firehouse. I never went to the firehouse. What was wrong with me? I never went to the public library and thought about it as a place that goes, but I thought about it as a library. And that's, I think the weird part of it is like you're surrounded by it all the time and it's easy to overlook it. So
and it's nice to just like see it for the Ghostbusters sites. Years back when during the 2016 film, Sony reached out to us because they were running a contest for different international tourists coming into New York City to have a Ghostbuster tour with the Ghostbusters. And they're like, you guys do this, right? I'm like, yeah. So we did it. And then I'm like thinking like, oh crap, I need a license, don't I? So I'm like rushing to get this license and studying for it. But what I love about doing the tour with these people, because a lot of them were not like ghost heads. They're just like, we want to see New York. We never been to New York. So you have to like make the tour around stuff that they would want to see, would want to experience. Like, of course, they want to eat pizza. They want to do this and that. So, you know, you tie in the Ghostbuster film locations of it. And what's great is you get a lot of different flavors of New York. Downtown New York and Central Park West and Times Square, all completely different vibes.
Totally different vibes, yeah.
But they're all so close to each other relatively, you know?
Right.
And totally different vibes. You get a really good feel for Manhattan all over those different places.
Yeah.
That's why I do like that. And I also loved like how geographically accurate Ghostbusters is. Like 55 Central Park West is across from Tavern on the Green and is in walking distance of Lincoln Center where Dana worked,
right.
You know?
Yeah.
Like this is all perfect. Like it's not like, you know, you watch a New York movie and they turn the corner and it's a completely different part of town, you know?
Yeah. The end of Afterlife, people were kind of sitting there going, well, why is the Ecto coming over the Brooklyn Bridge? Like, was it out on Long Island? What happened? Why would it be there? And I think it's so funny that like the trailer then was like, hey, the trailer opens up in Coney Island. What do you want to do about it? Right? Yeah. It's kind of like, yeah, if you want to think about where the last shot left you before, I mean, technically, if they're driving back from that event at night, they would have to take these roadways, presumably, to get there. But yeah, no, I think you're right. Like, I do want to ask you, have you ever taken people to raise a cult as part of your tour guide trip?
Never part of the tour. I've been there. There's not really much there, right? But I've been there. Actually, most recently, we added Columbia University to the tour.
Gotcha.
So we never really did that because it's so far out of the way. But we've done that. That's great. The last couple times I've been at the Museum of the American Indian have been fantastic because that's where they did the Ghostbusters too, right? And obviously, not everything was filmed there. It was mostly done on a stage, but there are parts that were done there at that area because during that time it wasn't a museum. It was actually still closed down before the Museum of the American Indian was built. But there was someone there because there's always been this rumor that by the entranceway when you walk in through the security area, there's these pink stains that they claim is from the slime, right? So there's always these rumors. So I include it for the tour and I say, listen, this hasn't been confirmed yet, but these are what I hear. But I'll tell you this, there was a guy there most recently. His name is Bob. And if you go there and ask for Bob, he will show you and tell you the whole story because he was actually there when it happened. He was on set and a cannon went off. A slime cannon went off, and all you could hear was, oh shit. It is all according to him. Oh shit. And so you saw where that stain was, where that plop of slime was, and where it dripped down. They quickly cleaned it off. But that type of stone is so porous that it's very hard to remove. So that's why there is some stains from the pink slime.
That's
so
funny.
According to a guy who worked there named Bob, that was the case. So,
that's
the thing too. With these tours, you run into people in New York that were around the time for Ghostbusters. A cab driver came up to me, pulled me, and you know I was dressed up and I needed to go uptown. I went in the cab. He's like, "Oh, Ghostbusters! You know, I never seen Ghostbusters before because I started working as a cabbie in 1983, and my first day was in the worst fucking traffic of my entire life because of the Ghostbuster gridlock." And I'm like,
That's
"Oh,
hilarious.
I'm so sorry." But you know, and then another person came up to me when I was doing the tour by the building, and they were saying how they used to live at 55 Central Park West, and during that day, her and her family needed to get to the airport, and they just couldn't get there because, you know, of all the filming and everything gridlocked and everything. So allegedly, according to her, and I asked Dan Aykroyd, and he doesn't remember this, but, you know, doesn't mean anything. Dan Aykroyd allegedly went up to her floor and grabbed her family suitcases and brought them down and hailed them a cab. He doesn't remember this at all, but she remembers this distinctly. Him suited up with like a jacket on and just like coming down,
my God.
you know, with all this luggage. So it's funny because you do these tours and you run into people that have these different connections to those stories, you know? So I try to include that as much as I can during the tours because people always tell us these stories, and I can't confirm if they're true or not, but they make good tales.
Yeah, I asked you about Raise a Cult largely because that was my hangout when I was in high school.
Oh, cool.
I would come out to not specifically Raise a Cult, but I would come down to St. Mark's Place, and we would hit up all the record stores there that existed at that time.
Yeah,
and eat pizza on the corner and hang out in Astor Place at the Big Stupid Cube. And
yep, that is a Big Stupid Cube.
Yeah,
we actually during Minions time that was where our studio like rehearsal space was, and then we would go to the Starbucks over there and the Kmart.
Gotcha.
And then I remember at St. Mark's too. There's an awesome bar. I don't know if it's still there. It's called KGB Bar, and it was there, a former hangout of the KGB. You've been there?
I've never been there, but I know what it is. Yeah.
Yeah,
there was two clubs over there too. At one point, Coney Island High was the punk club that was over there, and it eventually was closed up. And then I'm trying to think what the other one was called. It was on the corner. But one night we were supposed to go to a punk show across town. But on the way there, we decided to go screw around and, be in St. Mark's for a while first.
Yeah.
And this band, the LES Stitches, the Lower East Side Stitches, were a punk band that were playing over there. And we watched them get out of a cab, and the cabbie almost drove off with their instruments in the trunk. Like they were trying to get the stuff out, and the cabbie just took off, and they're like, "What are you doing?" And then we were like, "Hey!" We were helping like bang on the taxi cab. They get their instruments out, and they were like, "Do you want to come in the show for free?" We were like, "No, we have tickets for a different punk show across town." Just really weird. But yeah, that was a place that was kind of where we would go and buy. The Sounds was the name of the music store over there that was really awesome, and St. Mark's Comics was still there at the time and stuff. So it was like
I remember going to St. Mark's Comics.
Yeah. So, but now there's not really much over there. There's just like some delis. There's a Gap. I think it might still be there. But
I think someone in our group, our group mentioned that I think there's like a spot for sale at Raise a Cult, like that area.
Yeah,
they sent us like the street easy link.
What's also weird is I don't know if people realize this, but like it's also the location of the original Manic Panic shop, like the hair dye company.
Okay,
like, that's where they were. Like if you look in the Ghostbusters 2, like, it's like Manic Panic is like right next door. Yeah. So and there was like an S&M sex shop over there called Religious Sex. There was a lot of interesting stuff over there on that block.
Yeah.
That was where we hung out. We were like, let's go buy punk t-shirts and used CDs and tapes and look at all of the craziness that doesn't exist on Lily, sort of soft white Long Island. We took the train into the city and it's fun.
I miss those days.
I miss that. I miss those days. I do. I genuinely do. But I mean, like, to me, that's the spirit and the sort of sense of New York, that like St. Mark's Place in 1989 was not that far separated from St. Mark's Place that I was in 1998. It was just 9 years later, and things were kind of changing. And now it's a very different landscape over there. It's very much different than it used to be. But we haven't really talked about this much, but you brought it up a couple times, so I want to ask you about it. Tell me a bit about the Minions of Gozer, because I know that like this was something you performed in for a long time. And it's a thing that many like, OG ghost heads have told me about it over the years, and I've never really had a chance to talk with you about it.
So much like a lot of OG ghost heads and a guest of your podcast as well, I would check out Chris Stewart's Proton Charging every day since like 96. Like, is Ghostbusters 3 coming out? Is Ghostbusters 3 coming out? I would just scour his site for it, and then one day, of course, they posted like, he posted an article about like he thinks that that Ghostbusters could be a midnight movie, like a Rocky Horror kind of thing, and then years later, he posted that there is a group starting up called the Minions of Gozer, and they're hosting auditions. So I reach out to Angela, who ran the show, and I sent her an email like, "Listen, I will be anyone from Peter Venkman down to the redheaded extra that says Ghostbusters, all right, all right. I am here to do this." And I met her at the Landmark Sunshine, which is no longer a movie theater, but it was an awesome movie theater, and they were doing a screening of Ghostbusters there. So I met her there, and I knew there was another guy going there dressed up. So I'm like, okay, I guess I got to get a Ghostbuster costume now. So I went to the local, Army surplus store, got my Rothko suit, went to GB Fans, figured out like a bunch of things to put together for a suit. And then it was my first time suiting up and going to New York, and it was awesome. I auditioned for Venkman, got it. And then I ended up helping her and being co-producer on the show too. So, figuring out how we're going to make our proton packs and, going like in my garage and just like taking all this like beat up Tupperware and like spray painting it and getting like this wood and like hacking at a jigsaw, creating a motherboard, and then doing the silly string for this proton streams we were shooting at the audience because we wanted to make it like a fun, messy thing. We pitched it to a bunch of different places. The place that ended up having us was the IFC Center on West 4th Street, which was originally called the Waverly Theater, which is where Rocky Horror originally started.
Gotcha.
So we were there doing the midnight shows in 2011. It was a sold out weekend, and we top billed Werner Herzog, which was exciting. One of our members recently posted that we outbilled. Top billed him. But it was great, and every performance we tried to one up it. So the next performance we had a legit Marshmallow Man costume made by this guy named Kyle Pascuti in Connecticut, and it was wild, that Stay Puft costume. It was like Disneyland character Stay Puft,
right?
And that costume ended up being used later, I believe, in the epic nerd rap battles, which it was Ghostbusters versus Mythbusters.
Yeah, I know
that
what
was
you're
the
talking
Stay
about.
Puft costume. Yeah, and then that Stay Puft costume ended up going to Massachusetts Ghostbusters. And that was a wild show. That was the show that Sorrentino was at too.
Okay, that makes sense. Like that's the lineage of that costume. That makes sense. Yeah. Okay.
So that was Sorrentino at that show, and then we did a gender bender night for Pride Month. So I was Dana, and I loved being Dana. That was a fun show. And then we ended up doing a show at the bar that Chris Sorrentino's podcast was at. And then we ended up. It just got to a point though where it was a lot of work, and it was a lot of like putting things together. So it kind of fizzled out a little bit, and then it just ended. And then I eventually joined the New York City Ghostbusters in 2014. I joined them through the beginning, the very first annual walking tour for Ghostbusters Day, which was in June of 2014. And then we did it every year since. And I led those because in Minions of Gozer, we funded it through Kickstarter, and one of our perks was have a tour with the Ghostbusters. So that was the very first tour we did. It was 2 people. We scheduled a tour, and we did that Ghostbuster tour with them, and we're like, hey, this worked out. So it ended up doing it again for the 2014 meet with the New York City Ghostbusters, and at that point we were pretty much set. I was set with them. But I've parted ways with the Minions of Gozer group. If it ever comes back, I would love for it to come back. I am not going to be in it though, because it's way, way involved, and I have kids now and stuff. But I fully support it coming back if someone wants to pick up the reins on that, for sure.
I will say,
and I remember that year too. Before I joined the New York City Ghostbusters, you brought up the mayor of New York. I don't want to forget this. I got to meet him. I got to meet David Margulies,
that's awesome.
who played Mayor Lenny. He was doing a screening up in Washington Heights of Ghostbusters, special screening, where we have Mayor Lenny come up and do a Q&A. And we were all excited, all dressed up. And one of the things we did was we did our recreation of the ballroom scene So we have like these LED rope lights that we'd shake, and in photos it looked great. It just looked great, like, you know. So I never saw it in person because I'm always on the other side doing it.
Right.
But it was really fun, just like shooting that up and recreating that scene. And we were excited to finally meet the mayor, and we're like pushing away the MC, like, you know, like, hey, we just want to see this guy. And the MC turns out to be this guy who made In the Heights. It was Lin-Manuel Miranda, before Hamilton. So we have this picture all suited up, all geared up, with like
so
Lin-Manuel
funny.
in the middle holding a PKE meter, and we're just like, yeah, we just want to see the mayor from Ghostbusters, you know.
This is funny that you said this, because like strangely just this week I have been falling down a Sopranos rabbit hole, and I didn't realize, because David Margulies is like Tony Soprano's lawyer.
Yeah,
and I
he's a
didn't
lawyer,
realize that like Lin-Manuel Miranda has like a walk-on role as like a
Does
guy
he?
who, he's like a car valet or something.
That's funny.
I don't keep forgetting what his role is, but he's like got some small bit part where he walked across the screen. I was like, is that Lin-Manuel Miranda? And I Googled it and I was like, holy shit, he is in The Sopranos. So it wasn't the first time they worked together.
That was too funny. The best story, by the way, that David Margulies told us at the Q&A was, before, for Ghostbusters 2, he was doing a play in Los Angeles, and he was going to fly back to New York to film a scene in Ghostbusters 2. At least that's what he was telling us. And on the plane, sitting next to him was Ed Koch, right? Actual mayor of New York.
Actual mayor of New York City.
Yeah, and he was telling him like, "Hey, you know, I'm actually going to New York right now to play you in Ghostbusters 2." And without a beat, Ed Koch just told David Margulies, "Why the fuck didn't they ask me?" So that was like, that was like such a highlight story. Yeah.
I will tell you that the last time, if you want to hear the last great Chris Stewart idea that I heard about what Ghostbusters could be, it wasn't the last time he was on the podcast, but when he was on around Christmas time last year, we did sort of I think we did a commentary on Xmas Marks the Spot, the Ghostbusters Christmas episode.
Yep.
From Real Ghostbusters. And he said that he felt that Ghostbusters could be reimagined as a Christmas panto play. That it could be reimagined as essentially like as a Christmas pageant story, but you know, kind of like in the vein of the kind of goes wrong plays, right? And kind of do it as a
that would be
goofy
fun.
Christmas pantomime comedy play, right? And I was like, oh, that is a great idea. And now I'm like, oh, this is it. You got to get the group back together. This is your job now. We've given you a new task.
That could be. I could send it over to these guys. That would be pretty fun.
Go back and check out the episode where we review Xmas Marks the Spot, because Chris talks about this. He gets very into this idea of Ghostbusters as a panto play.
I mean, he was right about Minions of Gozer. I think it was a really great show. I wish it was still like in some form still going on. So like I said, if you're listening to this and ever want to do it, I'm more than happy to let you know what was involved. And we had like a bunch of fun side gags, and they all came about based on like restrictions. Like we did a show at BB King's in Times Square.
Yeah.
And they told us no silly string. So we're like, okay. So we immediately just thought, like, as kids, you know, you had those foam like noodles on the proton pack. So we had these foam pool noodles on our packs and just beat the shit out of the audience, you know. And then there was also no water allowed on stage, which was an issue because I would always get slime with water. Right. Like that was my slime when he slimed me. So one of our actresses, she dressed up in like a Green Man suit and just leapt on top of me, and I like wore her like a scarf, like she just slimed me, and it worked out so well. Like, so there's certain things that we've learned that work so well, like translated on
That's
stage.
so funny.
And that was one of them. Yeah.
I wish I could have seen that. That would be really fun to watch. I don't imagine there's a YouTube video of this because it's probably not of that era. But there is a Facebook page that has photos of some of your old Minions of Ghostbusters.
Yeah, I believe I'm still an admin on that Facebook page. So
yeah. So I don't know if the phone number that's listed there is still active, everybody, but call it immediately.
It probably won't be. But you know, it's also one of those Facebook pages that haven't been taken down. Like, it's just crazy with what's going on right now.
It's true. You have a live Ghostbusters shadow cast as the intro on the Facebook page, and yet no one has come along to algorithm you out of existence.
Yeah. But, literally after our toy drive last year, the weekend after, they took down our page for the first time.
Yeah.
Like,
I
our page was taken down, and man, that was rough. That was really rough because we just don't know what to do at that point because we get so much interaction on Facebook. We eventually got it back, and then months later they took it down again.
Right.
So it's just
I've jokingly said that most of Extraplasm's interactivity comes on Instagram for whatever reason. It's where I liked to be the most before I had a podcast. So I guess it makes sense that that's where I helped to build an audience first. But so I've jokingly said that if they ever come for the Extraplasm Facebook page, I'm just gonna be like, you can have it. Just as if one less thing I have to manage. You can just take it. It's fine.
Yeah.
I'll get by. I'm in another meta platform over here that you don't seem to care about. This one, for some reason, you care about. This other one over here, I prefer you don't care about. So let's just keep it that way.
Yeah. Move on to like Blue Sky or something or Threads.
Yeah, but for those of you who built the following like before, on that platform, I think it's really hard to be like, how do you lose that audience engagement and lose that connection where you're able to spread the word easily, So it's not been an easy road to hoe for folks who are dealing with that problem, and I know it. And hopefully, I don't know. I'm kind of hopeful that like the way that Ghostbusters news got hit recently, and that kind of, Sony marketing is kind of aware of it as the movie's coming out and having discussions, I think, with meta admins to some extent.
Yeah,
meta marketing
that's
people.
honestly
Hopefully, it's going to get worked out. So
that's how it works out because we had So on the Ghostbusters franchises worldwide group, I'm an admin there, and I joined as an admin because it's such a cesspool at times. Like, holy shit! So I banned a lot of people on there, and I'm more than happy to keep banning. So keep reporting, no problem. But we posted a Google form on there for franchises when they get hit to let us know, because then we can just pass it all along to Sony. So
nice.
We've continually just been doing that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the thing to kind of do is that to be aware of it, but it is a weird thing to be sort of navigating for folks because it's hard. Like you get cut off from this where you've built your audience already, and then to try and rebuild it is really difficult. And so I'm hopeful that they'll be able to figure it out. But what I was thinking about in the process of that was, as we were talking about this, is that if I looked at this problem, say 5-6 years ago, I would have thought, oh, well, the issue is that these groups are declaring themselves to be charity organizations, but they're not. They're just fan organizations. But in your case, right, and in the case of like a dozen different groups, you literally are 501c3 recognized charity organizations by the federal government.
Right.
In terms of how you file taxes, and you have total legitimacy to declare yourselves as charity organizations versus fans, right? But the sort of way that people just self-identify as charity organization means that becomes one of the things that gets flagged, right? Because it's like, oh, this is masquerading as a charity when it really isn't. And it's like, there needs to be a better system. There just needs to be like a better system for figuring out who's who. And to me, it's like, and this is like just the universe talking, anybody at Facebook listens to the podcast. I can go and create a page for Extraplasm and be like, I have a business page now. And Extraplasm is not a business, right? For anybody listening out there, no, like I don't take tax write-offs. I don't get to do any of that because this is not a business. Somebody recently offered to listen to the podcast more on Spotify if it would make me more money. And I said, you are very kind, but Extraplasm is a non-revenue endeavor. It's just like, it doesn't matter where you listen to it. Either way, it will just cost me money. But I'm okay with that. I made that commitment. I'm happy to be making my podcast. But for me, like if I were to get put up there and be like, oh yeah, I'm a media organization, I'd be like, that's kind of suspect. You're a podcast, which is what we're designated as, right? But like, if for people who have a charity organization, if they're like trying to designate themselves properly, but at the same time the algorithm flags them, it's a nightmare, right? So I don't know.
And the problem is there's no straight answer as to what the algorithm is actually doing. Is it because we're marked as a nonprofit? Is it because we have the word Ghostbusters in our name?
Right.
Like there's all sorts of like, I don't know, it's just doing it. So and trying to find the contact at Meta is like near impossible.
Oh, it's a nightmare. It's a nightmare.
Yeah.
It's just like, it's impossible. So I'm very grateful for the fact that, Eric Reich over at Ghost Corps has been kind of willing to engage folks about their Facebook page. He has a million other things to do. And, he's like, oh, I'm only involved in making movies within a multi-million-dollar franchise, but that's okay. I can iron out your Facebook problems. It's kind of like, that's very kind, but I don't know. I'm hopeful that they'll get a handle on this, because part of those tools and part of the ability to socially network is what has enabled so much of the good collaboration we've talked about in this episode, right? That's if we didn't have that, if we didn't have Facebook and all these different social platforms to engage each other on and live stream and do things, that where would we be? So it's kind of a double-edged sword. You kind of need them because you want to be able to interact and do your live stream, but at the same time, you wonder, will this be something that gets us tripped up because we're running a charity fundraising event and we have legitimacy to do so, but a robot has been programmed with bad parameters to run out and terminate things.
Pretty much,
the meta version of Skynet has not been given good rules. It's kind of like it's kind of like this though. If you think about it, like at the beginning of Terminator, the first Terminator, he's just going out and looking for all the Sarah Connors.
Yeah, he kills all the Sarah Connors.
He's just like goes to the phone book and he's like, I gotta find all the Sarah Connors, and he just tears the whole C page out of the book, and he's like rocking around like, I will kill all the Sarah Connors until all the Sarah Connors are stopped. And that there's like, you would think that someone would have given this elite killing machine just some better details, like, what's the town? What's the home address? No, Los Angeles, Sarah Connor. Jeez, like, it's just that, wow, do you have a more generic name that you could be just hunting down all of? Because you're going to change the timeline?
Right?
So it's not that far off.
Mary Smith,
Yeah, it's not that far off. Maybe this is how it happens. Maybe this is how we end up in that darkest timeline, is that Meta stupidly trains the algorithms to kill off all the Ghostbusters Facebook pages, and that like different logic unit gets like embedded inside of a Terminator that just goes, if you know the name of something, kill all of the thing with the name. Like, it's just...
Yeah. I mean, I work in software, so I'm sure it's just like some ticket item that's just low priority.
Oh, yeah.
No one's handling right now because it's not paid. They're not losing money for kicking
I hear
pages out. So they don't care.
Like, my
about
background before I became an educator was in information technology, and I could tell you for sure that has not been given high priority in the queue of tickets that are currently sitting there waiting for resolution. There are far bigger issues. They're like, we need to stop the child pornography before we worry about the kids, the adults who can't cosplay as Ghostbusters and claim it. Like, that's
exactly.
Yeah. There's bigger fish to fry over at Meta. But yeah. Well, and I'm glad that you were able to get back on your Facebook account, and I'm glad that you're out there once again doing the toy drives and making more Ghostbusting charity opportunities in the tri-state area. And I'll say that because if you're a New Yorker, then you're allowed to go everywhere in the tri-state area. It's permissible. It's what your Easy Pass lets you do.
We do. We've been everywhere, man.
But anything else you want to throw out there to sort of plug or tell folks about before we wrap up for this episode of Extraplasm?
So if you are interested in the toy drive, you could find our toy drive at ghostbusterstoydrive.com.
Whoa, that's awesome.
Today. Yeah. It's just an easy way to get there. So it's just ghostbusterstoydrive.com will get you to the telethon.
Yeah, and I want to encourage everybody to tune in on Wednesday. The podcast comes out on Tuesday. What time on Wednesday?
8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Gotcha. So if you're out here on the Pacific Coast, you can eat your dinner at the same time as you watch it. And if you're out there in New York, then you can eat your dessert as you watch it. And then just eat something and watch it. That's my plan.
You can eat something. It's good. And we usually start with the East Coast franchises and then move our way west. This way time zones work out.
That's amazing. Yeah. And then you should what you should do is you should get like 5 pizzas and you should get like several bags of bagels and you should just auction those off.
That'd be so good. Oh man. Absolutely. Everyone says pizza, but it's true about the bagels. You go you go anywhere outside this area
bagels,
and it's like talking a foreign language. Like I went down to Florida and went to like a bakery, is asking for some bagels. They literally opened like a Thomas, like a Thomas bag of bagels and just charged me $3 a bagel.
You're like, you bastards.
I see them opening the bag. I'm like, guys.
Hey, look, I'll say this. I can produce a pretty good New York pizza in my kitchen because I've taught myself how. But I've dabbled in bagels and I got close, but nowhere close enough. I was
rough.
Like, I'm never going to be able to pull this off with my materials I have here. This is no good. But yeah, I'm telling you, if you do get a bag of bagels, put them on there. Maybe I'll bid on them. I'll be like, what do you want for them? Send them to me.
And then with the cream cheese,
Oh yeah, you need the scallion cream cheese. That's awesome. Now
Sorrentino came to my house last year and brought like this like buffet of cream cheeses from this place. Yeah, like a Fruity Pebbles cream cheese and like a bacon bit one, the scallion one. It was crazy.
I want to say one final thing about Chris Sorrentino, Baby Belushi, before we sign off this podcast, because I've been saying it for a few weeks to people out of total love and appreciation because I want it to happen. I want Chris Sorrentino to have a balloon in the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade.
I want that. Forget any Ghostbuster thing whatsoever. Just get giant Baby Belushi balloon.
Yeah. It's a Pizza-plasm balloon. It just represents... And maybe it could be a balloon and a float. It could be like a balloon of the Baby Belushi and then a Pizza-plasm float that goes behind it that just represents all the different things that he creates.
And I will don up my Elwood gear again, and we could do that on the float. We could do Soul Man.
Yeah. So I think this is a good idea. This is let's get it in the works. Somebody call up the Macy's in Herald Square. Tell them we got an idea. They're gonna pay for it. We're not, because we don't have balloon money, and I don't have that much helium.
Forget it. No way. Let alone get us in Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade money.
Yeah. No, that's fine. It's happening. The Extraplasm Parade float's happening next year. In terms of the balloons, we may not have enough helium, but I'm full of enough hot air. We'll make it happen.
We can make it work. But I do want to say, if you are in New York City or plan on coming to New York City, do not hesitate. If you're thinking about it, do not hesitate to reach out to our group. We love meeting other Ghostbuster fans. There's over 60 of us all through the 5 boroughs and outside, like myself. So, we're more than happy to, say hi to other Ghostbuster fans that are coming to the city.
I'm going to make a trip to New York sometime soon. Not just because there's a movie coming out, but I want to come back to New York.
And there's a Ghostbusters Day on a Saturday this year. Yes.
The
40th anniversary.
I have it in my bones to come back for this year. I want to make it back in 2024, and I'm hoping to be able to meet so many of you face to face. But I'm glad that we got to meet in this way, because we've interacted and sort of seen each other in comments for a long time, and I've definitely hear your name tossed around as a great person to get to know, and I'm really glad we had an opportunity.
They were lying. They were all lying.
No, I enjoyed this conversation so much with you. I'm glad we got to do it. So, and come back again sometime soon. We want to hear more when you're getting ready for the next Ghostbusters Day and whatnot. And maybe we'll all be together for that one. And we'll all do it. We'll celebrate. We'll have a live Extraplasm. It'll be completely crazy.
The extended tour.
That's right.
We'll go to St. Mark's and just go in like random buildings.
Yes, that'll be awesome. Is this Raise a Cult? Nope. Okay, this is a deli. Bye.
We did stop by. We did make a weird pit stop like that once, because we were at Lincoln Center, and it's like, oh, let's walk like 5 blocks south, guys. Don't worry, it's gonna be a good one. You guys know what this is? And I point to this church. That's right. That's where Ray and Egon were lifting up the slime during the Ghostbusters 2 montage. These are the steps right here. Look at that. Okay, I guess we'll move on now. That's like blistering cold.
That's what we're gonna do. We're gonna make it like we'll make the extended version of the tour that has every single thing. This is the tunnel that Louis Tully ran through, even though he didn't actually run through it because they cut that scene.
Yeah, that's true. We got like the deleted scenes. We can even go to that building that was a nightclub that was used in Ghostbusters 2 for the subway. I forget what it's called, the tunnel. I think it was called the tunnel.
I think it's tunnel. I think you're right.
Yeah. So we can go there. Like, man, there's so many places. We can go to
That's it.
Rockefeller Center. We've actually gotten kicked out of Rockefeller Center for the same reasons to get kicked out during the montage, which is like, hey, you have to fuck over property. It's private property. So it's happened to us there. We've had the full Ghostbusters experience.
That's great. I hope to come and have the full Ghostbusters experience with you all in the future. Thank you again, Ryan, for coming on the podcast. And we'll talk to you again soon. Thank you so much.
See you later.
Take care. That about wraps things up for Extraplasm this week. I want to say thank you once again to Ryan Espin of the NYC Ghostbusters for coming on the show and telling us a bit about what's going on out there in New York with their charity efforts, as well as with the toy drives that are happening nationwide with so many different franchises. If you're out there participating in that movement, thank you so much for the work you're doing, and I want to hear about it. So let me know at extraplazompodcast@gmail.com or via, Extraplasm social media contacts. I want to remind you as well that you can tune in to watch the live stream at ghostbusterstoydrive.com at 8 p.m. Eastern on Wednesday to get a bit of a meet and greet with the franchises who are going to be running those varied toy drives, as well as to donate if you wish to help out NYC in their efforts to provide a better Christmas season and a better holiday for kids who are in need in the South Bronx area. I also want to say thank you to Brendan Pearce of Badoochi Studios, who provides our logo, as well as vaporwave artist MAGNAVOX, whose version of Ghostbusters serves as our theme song each week. And of course, I need to say thank you to you for listening, for participating, and being a part of the community. I've really enjoyed hearing from folks in the last few weeks with responses to the podcast, and I've had some really good conversations in the wake of the Paul Feig Q&A episode we did last week that were really kind and really insightful reactions that I had from folks in direct messages. So if you're one of those folks who reached out to, sort of provide some commentary and have a good conversation about that episode, thanks. It was really nice to talk with you about those things. I'm really excited about the holiday season ahead, and I hope that yours is off to a great start. As we get into the holiday season, though, there's nevertheless always some sort of stress that's happening. Try to take it easy, try to have a good time, and as Ernie Hudson reminds us every single week,
Try to have fun and always keep on busting. Take care.